Can everyone hear me? It's hard to tell. So I am first generation, and for me, this has not always been the easiest thing in the world. Growing up, I went to school, a private school in Chicago, where I was the only person of color in a very large school of white kids. And at first, it wasn't, you're not so different, you all like the same toys and things like that. But like you hit the middle school times and suddenly everybody's in cliques. I was a girl who liked sci-fi. People didn't really identify with that. And then the ethnic differences came out. So around like 8th grade, my best friend at the time, let's call her Jane, because that's her name, was like, everyone's been asking about why you smell. In my mind, I'm like, I smell? Like I put deodorant on. And I was like, oh. And she goes, well, I explained that, you and your family burn spices to your gods, which was a very confusing explanation because I was going to a Catholic school where I was Catholic with this group of people for 9 years. So it was like, where did that come from? What did you come and see at my house that you thought we were burning spices to the gods? My mom was cooking curry. That's what it was. So for the rest of high school, my room was hermetically sealed from the rest of the house. And then there were things like, in the Indian culture, there's a lot of fear about darkening your skin, even though there are plenty of people that are dark. So I wasn't allowed to shave my legs. And after the smell incident, it's like, oh, I'm shaving my legs. But I'm getting permission. So I would try to gird up the courage and talk to my mom about it. And I chickened out 4 times. And finally, when I was able to spit it out, she felt so guilty that it was so hard for me to ask her that she's like, fine, yeah, go shave your legs. So, it was like the project of a weekend. I was gonna shave every hair on my legs, so help me God, because I was not gonna be different. And I shaved, and I'd be bent over the bed, have my little sister check, did I get everything back there? And I was gonna walk into school Monday, and I was gonna be hairless, and I was gonna be like everybody else. Except good old Jill told everybody that I had shaved my legs. So when I walk in, there is a gaggle of girls, sweetly supportive, and Forrest Gump had just come out, and I was like, please God, make me a bird and help me fly far, far away, because it was just mortifying. We had this moment of oh, I'm like everybody, but now everybody's noticing that I wasn't like everybody, and now I am like everybody. So you're not quite American enough, right? But with the Indians, you're not quite Indian enough. So at one point I was lectured on how I was saying my mom's Indian name incorrectly, and the Indian culture is very collectivistic. So when you're in a collectivist community, everybody knows your business. And when you're an immigrant here, that can be super helpful because you have community here. So if you are like everybody else, it's great. You have home away from home. If you are not like everyone, which we were not, my parents ended up getting a divorce, then you are the other and you are cast out. So, okay, so there's a little bit of there. And then I, of course, ended up marrying a white guy who was atheist and 2 years younger than me, so family was thrilled with that first time around. But I will say that was the early part of me struggling with being first generation. Because the latter part, what I've come to understand is that as you grow older and you have more conversations with the older generation, because when you're younger, the older generation is you're gonna tell me to stop and I'm gonna find a way to get what I want, and so you're not actually ever talking to each other. But as you grow older, you can finally do whatever the hell you want, you can actually start to get to know one another. And slowly I heard more and more about my mom's journey. And my mom came from a poor family, not dirt poor. They had their own farm. They had enough to share when people were needy. but not by any means wealthy. She was one of 7 children. And she wanted to be a math teacher, but she had contracted an illness, and in one way or another, that path was closed to her, so she had to become a nurse, which she loathed. She hated nursing, and it's ironic because she's a fantastic nurse. She really grew into it. But nursing got her out of India. It gave her an opportunity. She wanted to come to America, but she did not have money for a plane ticket. She didn't know anybody who could get her a plane ticket. And so she went to Zambia. Zambia was paying for nurses, and you had to do a 3-year stint. They would pay you a stipend, and they would fly you. So my mom gets on a plane, she gets off a plane, and she comes out and she sits down, and she is waiting with her bag. And this is, in her, like when she tells it, she talks about how stupid she was because the program didn't like pick you up, and like take you to their facility. They just bought you the plane ticket. So this nice Indian couple walks by and sees her sitting there. She's all like excited, out of the country for the first time. And they're just like, hi, what are you doing here? She explains the situation. The husband and wife exchange glances. They're like, why don't you come home with us? And they house her for the night and they get to her destination. And what I love about her time in Zambia is that my mom knows no fear. Like, I'm sure she was scared. But, when she tells the story, her time in Zambia was her chance to, like, excel. She loved, like, practicing English. She, like, wanted to practice English. And it was also a great time because that stipend, you could only send so much money to India. So it was a huge time of independence. It's like, okay, I sent the money that I could to India, and now I have to spend it all in Zambia. So, and she did save. She saved for that ticket to America. So she spent 3 years there. She learned English. She became a great nurse. And then at the end of the 3 years, she had enough money, and she flew to America straight. She never went back to India at that point. And her friend picked her up, and I think this is like the most hilarious story. And the first thing he did was take her to a car wash. So if you're like this person who, is like never been to America and you really didn't have a car, like the car wash is like the most amazing thing ever. And within that first week, she was living with her uncle. She scored 2 jobs, like at nursing homes, because she still had to pass the state boards, and enrolled in like the state board training program. And to me, that is amazing. Like, you come here, you have like, very little money, you get the 2 jobs, and you enroll in school. And so, like, when you are that person's kid, it's like, you don't really have any excuses, right? You can't really, like, feel like something is too hard, because everything she did was way, way harder. And, like, the other story, again, part of being here and not being in India means you don't really have the extra familial relationships. You don't have your grandparents, not really. You meet them and you're like, oh, hey, but you don't really know them. But my favorite story, which also gives me strength when I'm struggling, is that of my grandmother. My grandmother was this like tiny 4-foot person, and once my mom got here, after she became a citizen, she started filing for her younger brothers and sisters. And at that point, that's all my mom could do. She couldn't like push for it and like, really make it happen. There was a lot of domestic violence in the home, and it was basically like sending letters, filing the paperwork, and like, you guys have to somehow make this happen. And so part of it was that one of her parents had to come to America to establish residency so that they could file for the children, my mom's brothers and sisters. So this letter comes, and it's sitting there, and my grandfather is a man who's never left his farm and plans to never leave that farm. And the letter is sitting there, and my grandmother lets it go, and finally goes, what about that letter that Anna sent? And my grandpa's like, no, we're not, it doesn't matter, we're not doing it. And this mother goes, well, I'm gonna go. And he's like, what? And her daughters are like, what? And she's like, oh, no, I'm going to America. My younger kids are going to America. I'm going. And they're like, but you get really heavy motion sickness. Because again, little tiny old lady, never left her farm. Every time she would get into any kind of vehicle, she experienced severe motion sickness. And she turned to them and she went, Marinele, which means, isn't there medicine for that? And this tiny little old lady got her ass in a plane and flew here. And my mom would always smile and say, like, how smart she realized my grandmother was, because my grandma came here, stayed as long as she needed to establish that residency, and even picked up a little bit of English. You know, if the phone rang or somebody came to the door and she was taking care of us and couldn't really handle it, she would go, no English, and send the person on their way. So, you know, I went from going, oh God, this sucks, I'm different, I look different, I can never blend in, blah, 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 to every time I came up against a roadblock, it's not like I would kick it down right away, but when I was licking my wounds, I would think of these incredible women who really pushed past any fear, pushed past any doubts, and got me here. So how can I not get to the next step when I have them as examples? Thank you very much.